Hello, thank you so much for joining us for our Hachette Schools STEM event. We are going to hear from some very exciting authors about their new science, space, engineering, and technology books. And without any further ado, I will introduce Professor Raman Prinja.
Great. Well, hello, Roman. Thank you for joining us for our Hachette Schools Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics event. We're very excited to have you here to talk about your new book, Our Cosmos. And to kick us off, I just wondered if you could give us a quick introduction about yourself and the book, Our Cosmos.
Thank you, Chrissy. It's a pleasure to be here, actually. I'm Raman Prinja. I'm a professor of astrophysics. The science I study, when I study the universe, I study the most massive stars in our galaxy, the ones that ultimately explode actually at the end of their lives. I'm the head of department at University College London, and that's my role there.
Great. And our next question, how old were you when you first became fascinated with space? And was there something in particular that you can remember that sparked your interest?
I guess it would have been around about 10 years or so age. I think I've always been drawn to the night sky. I've always been drawn and been fascinated by the stars. And you're looking up in the night sky and just, whether it's a garden or on holiday somewhere. I've always kind of been fascinated to think, how far are these things? How old are these stars? And just the sheer, I guess the impression, the size of space and what might be out there. So I've always been fascinated. I've always been drawn in by the night sky. I think almost all my life. Still am.
Yeah, I love looking at the stars in the sky. I mean, sadly, being based in London, I don't
No,
always see that many, but they are always very magical.
no, it's stunning when you do get yourself to a very dark site, maybe on a holiday somewhere. It's really stunning. It's a constant reminder of the amazing universe. Really.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I mean, space has always been and is perennially a popular topic for children. What do you think the enduring appeal of space science is for kids?
Um, I think space and astronomy, it sparks ideas and thoughts about exploration, about discovery, adventure, mystery. And I think that's really capturing, not just for young readers, but your more elder and older readers as well. What's really cool here are the ingredients as well. So you've got this fascination, this exploration, which is really intriguing, and then you've got the ingredients in there, like rockets and spacecraft, explosions, very, very powerful events, really bizarre things that can go on, weird planets and aliens, perhaps. There's a whole combination, and I think that really fascinates young readers and to get excited about that whole concept of the universe.
Definitely. And how do you hope your books can help those children who are fascinated with the universe?
Well, I mean, if you look at something like with our Cosmos, what we have there is what I'm designed try to do there is really present really the complete guide to space. So to cover almost every angle, from constellations to exploding stars, from the latest spacecraft that are flying across the solar system to discover planets, to the fact that now discovered thousands of planets around other stars, that we have our Milky Way galaxy, and yet we also have a universe of a trillion galaxies. The whole range is there in our cosmos, and I think what I'm trying to do is to I'm really motivated to do is to give an understanding to young readers, to really give them an understanding as to what's out there in the universe. Sort of explain well the objects we see so they can get to know how they work, get to have a sort of a familiarity of when you see something in the sky or you read about something or you see an image on your computer, you can have some insight, if you like, as to what's going on. And also in the book like Our Cosmos, I'm trying to give an understanding also about how we make discoveries. How do we find stuff out? We use powerful telescopes. We have rovers on Mars, and how do we actually discover these things that we talk about? So to share that fascination with of these latest discoveries of the cosmos is what Our Cosmos is about, and the other books that I've been writing. I, I think in the background of all this is that trying to ensure or try to help young readers form opinions about science, so they can discuss science from these books with that knowledge, their peers, with teachers, with parents, with siblings. Those conversations around the breakfast table at home because you've read something in these books. I think those two-way conversations are really, really valuable, and to have informed opinions from young readers it's just a great skill. I think if we can get that across to them, it's a great skill, and I think I'm hopeful my books can help do that.
That's brilliant. I mean, yeah, we know kids always have loads of questions and things about space and everything else, well, everything in the world. And it's lovely that you're sort of focusing on giving them the chance to form their own opinions and really develop that skill and understanding and knowing what they think and they believe.
Yeah, it's really important for development.
Yeah, very important. What are your top 3 features of the universe that are covered in your book?
Well, actually, that's quite tough because there are so many to select from in our course because it is a complete guide. I guess number one probably for me would be the latest fleet of spacecraft that are exploring the planets right now. We really got, it's a real golden age of exploration of the solar system. We have got new spacecraft out to Mercury, rovers on Mars. We've had spacecraft really up close to Jupiter and Saturn and looking at their remarkable moons, really remarkable moons, and the amazing properties of them. So that's one real highlight for grabbing hold of this book and getting to it. The other one I think is the zoo of stars in our Milky Way galaxy. It is incredibly rich. The variety of stars and the fascinating lives that stars have, from dusty birth to their explosive deaths, are covered in this book. And I think that's a really interesting and quite a fascinating story to have. And I guess my third top one is the big picture of the universe. So the book goes on to in its closing chapters in sections to discuss trillions of galaxies that are racing away from each other. The universe is expanding, the universe is in overdrive, and it's being driven apart by a really mysterious force, if you like, known as the dark energy. And no one really knows what this dark energy is. And it's I think it's wonderful to close the book with those possibilities of how the universe might end by something whose properties we're not sure about yet. And some of the young readers will one day, hopefully, maybe even go out and help us understand that dark energy.
Yeah, that's really exciting, isn't it? When you think of all the possibilities in the next 50 years that these young readers could be discovering, it's just beyond our comprehension compared to what we knew 50 years ago. So, really exciting.
Yeah, there's huge number of discoveries going forward.
Yeah. As a university professor, you are obviously very used to talking about space and the cosmos with adults. What do you find the differences when you're writing your books for children and sort of your focuses and how you present it?
I think the starting point in some ways is actually very similar. That is to really explain the basics, to really ensure that the basics are there for you to build on, to build the topics from that. So I think in that sense, it's the same objective, to make sure that you understand the basics so that you can then understand the scaled up extra bits from that, if you like. In many ways, these topics can be scaled and stretched. I mean, I've given talks on a very similar topic overall to school kids and to adults, so if you're describing the future of the universe or the evolution of stars or these exoplanets, you can scale that material provided you make sure that the basic information is understood, and then you can build up from that. So I think it's a similar starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I am, I work in publishing, not down the sciencey end, and I've learned so much from reading your books. And it is always about just understanding, bringing us in at the base level so that we can grab some of those bigger concepts.
That's really good to hear. That's really good to hear because I think the other part of this is that sometimes parents and adults, they only want to know the same amount, actually, you know. They've got a lot of other things to read and a lot of other
Yeah,
things. Sometimes that 2-page spread in our Cosmos is just what you also wanted to know and know more, which is great because you can have that conversation, like I was talking about. You can then still have the conversation with the young reader.
yeah, definitely. And the way that the spreads are set out in these books is great for teachers as well who are dipping in and out of topics, because you can just have this double-page spread and that's covering your topic for the lesson and giving you all the information that you need.
Yeah, that's great for that. I think you just go
Yeah,
in, just have a look at the bits you want, and then come to another bit later.
exactly. Dip in and out. We just got a couple of fun questions for you at the end. So firstly, readers always love to know a little bit more about the authors. So what is your favorite writing snack? Do you have one, or like a particular playlist that you like to play?
Well, I think for the snacks, I think you probably get me into trouble now, but I tend to eat far too many digestive biscuits when I'm writing. You know, sitting there dipping digestive biscuits into tea it's probably my my
Oh,
go-to.
definitely.
So it's not good. Yeah, so that's probably the main thing for me.
Yeah, plenty of tea and
Otherwise,
biscuits.
plenty of
Yeah,
tea and biscuits, yeah.
we
You
can all
just don't realize.
sympathize with that.
Yeah, you just don't realize how many you've eaten before you've barely written anything. But nevertheless, that's the thing.
And finally, our last question, the question we know you get asked a lot when you're at your school events. Do you think aliens exist?
Oh yeah, that is a very popularly asked question, and it's very understandably. I think, I think it's very likely there's some form of life out there. We don't know what kind. I mean, it could be bacterial, or it could be something far more complex, living organism like us. We're extremely complicated, of course, as a living organism. If you look at it at the moment, we have 200 billion stars just in our galaxy, and from that we know there are billions of planets. So that means there's a huge number of Earth-like planets out there orbiting around sun-like stars. And some of those planets we know are in what we call the Goldilocks zone. They're not too hot, not too cold, just the right temperature for some of those ingredients for life to thrive. And then, so we've got 200 billion stars just in our galaxy, and there's a trillion other galaxies in the universe, right? So that's like, 200 billion trillion stars in the universe. That's a lot of stars and potentially a lot of planets. That's like the number one with 23 zeros behind it, right? That's I mean, that's like a lot. That's just one example of that. And so I think given that sheer number of stars and planets and what we already know about some of the planets we've seen around other stars, I think there's a lot of possibility for something being out there, and we're getting closer and closer, I think, to detecting the signature of that now.
Yeah, very exciting. And I wonder if in our lifetime we will ever see evidence of that.
I think we will. I think we will start to see some very clear evidence of some forms of life are out there. It could even be as close as in our solar system, because we know there are moons around Jupiter and Saturn that have more water below their surface than the entire Earth does. So,
Yeah.
could even come from much closer to home than we think.
Yeah, endless possibilities.
Possibilities, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for talking to
Pleasure.
us for Hachette Schools. We are out of time, but it's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone. So my name is Neal Layton, and I'm a children's book illustrator and author. And science and technology, yes, they're two of my sort of favourite things. I'm very interested in both those things. In fact, when I was at school, I thought I wanted to be a scientist when I grew up. But I didn't. I became a children's book illustrator and author. So consequently, lots of the stories in the books which I write now, they have a bit of science in them or a little bit of technology because I'm interested in it. And in actual fact, that's a really good tip. If you're interested in writing or making books, make books about something you're really interested in, whatever it is. because if you're interested in it, then your books will be interesting, and you'll write and you'll draw with more kind of passion and imagination. So yeah, that's the kind of good tip. So lots of my books have a little bit of science or technology in them. And this is one which came out recently called The Story of Things, and it's about the history of human invention. So from before anything was invented at all to now, and it's called The Story of Things because when I talk about things in this book, what I mean is a thing in this book is something that has been made by humans. So it's not something that's grown, it's not something that's natural. So in this book, a thing is something that's been made by human beings. So it starts on planet Earth, starts back in time in the sort of pre-Stone Age, before any things were invented at all. Which made life a bit difficult, because if you've got no things, you're going to get cold. You haven't got a bed to sleep in. You haven't got a house. And then it starts with the Stone Age, with the first stone tools, a sharp, pointy stone, which changed everything. People went stone crazy, and made loads of stone things, stone spears, fishing hooks, and all sorts of things. And then it moves through history, looking at all the other things which human beings have invented for themselves. Going through some of the civilizations. In fact, I learned, it was a really fun book. There's a lot of research. It took me a long time to write because I had this really great idea, and then I had to read about 3 million years of human history and sort of find out what the important bits were, all the bits which I thought were important and the bits which I thought were fun. But along that journey, I learned a lot of interesting things. Like, did you know that the ancient Egyptians, they invented lots of things, including pyramids and ink. They also invented marshmallows, like 4,000 years ago. So that was interesting. And the Romans, they invented lots of things. They invented soap, concrete buildings, and public toilets. And apparently, when I was researching it, I found that sometimes the public toilets exploded, which is kind of scary. And yeah, when I'm illustrating, I like to use collage. So that's my dog barking in the background. Collage is basically cutting and sticking. And so, for instance, this one, I took a photo of a candle and then I kind of drew it into the picture. So that's me doing a bit of collage there. Or in this one, where people are trading things, they're swapping things. They're swapping fine silks from China for lovely glassware from Italy. And you can see that's like a real pattern of Chinese silk, and these are real pots. So yeah, lots of collaging in this book. Another one of my favourite things, along with science and technology. And we learn a little bit more that when flush toilets were invented, very important thing. Printing presses, and then it comes right up to sort of today, the modern era, with the invention of the microchip, which has really changed everything in the last kind of sort of 50 years. Yeah, like computers, calculators, all sorts of things. Anyway, that's the story of things, kind of about the amazing history of ideas, inventions and discoveries, about 3 million years of it. Which sort of leads into another book, which also came out this year. And this one is called What is AI? The Curious Kid's Guide to Artificial Intelligence. And artificial intelligence, a lot of people are talking about it at the moment, and they're getting a little bit excited about it. So I thought it'd be good to write a book about it, to explain what this thing is, explain kind of what's interesting about it, what it might be good for, what it might not be quite so good for, and yeah, so that's what this book is. What is AI? So AI is basically artificial intelligence. So it's basically looking at the idea of computers which can actually think, you know, like a human brain. Yeah, and that raises lots of interesting questions. Not quite so much collage in this book, but there is a lot of drawing. And one of my favourite things in this book was drawing what an artificial intelligence computer brain would actually kind of look like. And I imagined it would look a bit like that, and it's just a bundle of noughts and ones and noughts and ones and noughts and ones and noughts and ones, because that's actually how computers work. They work in noughts and ones, in binary. And I put a smiley face on it, like googly eyes and a smiley face, because I like putting googly eyes and smiley faces on things. But it explains what this thing is, how it works, stuff it's used for at the moment, which is kind of helpful, like recycling. And then it also looks at what might happen in the future. And in the book, what I found really interesting was you also learn that you, yes, every single one of you possess the most complicated thing in the universe. And I've got one too. In fact, we all have. And I found that really interesting, that all of us own, kind of possess, the most complicated thing in the universe. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but if you read the book, you'll find out. I'll give you a clue. You're using it right now, and I am too. Anyway, that is called What is AI? And that was called The Story of Things. And I love science and technology. I hope you do too. It's an interesting way to look at the world. And through science, I think the thing I love about science is it's a way of looking at the world and learning about the world. And when I learn a little bit about how the world works, it makes me enjoy things even more and kind of look at things in a different way. Anyway, so hopefully these books might help you look at the world in a different way and might trigger lots of ideas and thoughts. And thank you for listening. That's it. Bye.
Hi, my name is Roma Agrawal. I'm an engineer, author and broadcaster, and my new book, 7 Small Inventions That Changed the World, is out now. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this book. So there are lots of books about inventions out there, but what I've done in this book is to come up with the 7 smallest and most fundamental inventions that have completely changed the way that we live. Now, I love making stuff and I love crochet, so I'm going to show you my little 7 inventions and tell you a little bit about each one of them. And yeah, so the first one is actually the nail. Now, this is a nut and bolt, and I'm a structural engineer, and I got to work on the Shard, the tallest building in Western Europe, for 6 years of my career. And it always struck me that I've built this huge big building, but actually the most important things that were holding this building together were the nuts and bolts, which fit in the palm of my hand. And that kind of blew my mind. So I investigated the story and realized that nails were really the fundamental piece of engineering that allowed nuts and bolts and then our skyscrapers to exist. So nails go back about 6,000 years, if not longer. And the first nails that we have found are from ancient Egypt, and they were made from bronze. And metal is a really good thing to make nails from, because you can heat it up and then hammer it to a sharp point. And when it cools down, it maintains that shape. Okay, and nails are the first piece of technology that allowed us to put things together. So if you can imagine your desk that you've got, or even your shoes, some of those fancy leather shoes have nails in them. Or if you think about skyscrapers like the Shard, it is stuff like nails and screws and rivets and bolts that are holding all of this together. So a really important invention. The next invention I'm going to tell you about is the spring. And I love the spring. It is a very versatile piece of engineering. It means it comes in many different shapes and sizes. It can be used in so many different ways. And, you know, we think about these sort of coiled metal springs as the obvious ones, and these are great springs. But actually, the earliest springs were the ones that were invented to shoot with. So the bow and the arrow were actually the oldest form of spring. So the bow is a spring because you deform it and it holds energy, and then when you release it, that energy gets released and does something for you. Now, what's really cool about springs is that you can get that sort of size from a bow, or you can get tiny little springs that go into our mechanical watches or into our clocks. And those completely revolutionized the way in which we tell time, because springs can measure time so accurately. But then, because I'm a structural engineer, I also am so interested in the huge springs that can be under the columns of a skyscraper, especially if it's in an earthquake zone. So if you imagine you have a big column coming down, and then here's the ground, and there's an earthquake, so this ground is shaking away, the spring can actually absorb some of that energy and stop it from all going up into the building. So that's the spring. We've also got the wheel, and the wheel seems like a really obvious invention to include, but it's a really important one. My favourite fact about the wheel is that it actually wasn't invented for transport. Wheels were invented that way up, and they spun this way. And that's because the first wheel ever invented in ancient Mesopotamia, again about 6,000 years ago, was the potter's wheel. So there's this expression, don't reinvent the wheel. But I disagree with that, because if we hadn't reinvented the wheel, we wouldn't have gone from a potter's wheel to the kind of wheels that we see on our cars and our wagons and other forms of transport. But wheels have been reinvented so many times. So they started off made of solid wood, and that made them quite chunky and heavy. Then we created spokes, which are those lines that you sometimes see, and those used to be made from wood. Then we reinvented it again to create the wire wheel, which is a kind of wheel you see on your bicycles. And my favorite type of wheel is a gyroscope, and gyroscopes are a little bit like a spinning top. So you set it off spinning, and it spins and it, it keeps standing up vertically. And then when it stops spinning, it kind of falls over. So it's got momentum, which keeps it standing up while it's spinning. And there are 4 huge tops like this, 4 gyroscopes in the International Space Station. And that helps people in Houston, engineers in Houston, to orientate the International Space Station so that it's facing the correct way, which I think is very cool. So we went all the way from the potter's wheel to the International Space Station. I also talk about the lens and the magnet. So these are interconnected in a way, because light, which passes through lenses, is an electromagnetic wave, which is a similar thing to the forces that come out from a magnet. So they're kind of interconnected. And what I love about, maybe let's pick the lens now. So light will pass through the lens and it will bend and come out the other side. So it changes what you can see. So you can imagine I've got lenses obviously in my glasses, but also inside my eyeballs. And what the lens allowed us to do was to see the tiniest little things like bacteria, and also really big things that are very far away through telescopes, like other planets and other galaxies and so on. And what I would love you to do, my little fact about lenses, is that there was an Arab scientist called Ibn al-Haytham who did incredible research on how light and lenses work, and I think he should be just as well known as Isaac Newton. Then we have string, and string might not seem like an engineering invention, but it is. And my favourite fact about string is that it was not invented by humans. In fact, it was invented by Neanderthals. And what they did was to take some fibres from bark, and then they twisted those fibres together in one direction so that they stayed together. And then they took 3 such strands of twisted fibre and then twisted it again, but in the opposite directions so that the string would be really nice and strong. And string is incredible because it's very flexible if you try and squish it together, but if you pull it, it really can take so much force. And that's why string is used in our clothes. It's used in things like bulletproof vests. But the difference between those fibers is that those fibers are human-made, they're artificial, made from different types of plastics or polymers. Whereas you can also make string from natural fibers like cotton or sheep's wool. And they're all really, really important. And obviously, again, because I'm an engineer, what I decided to do was to look at the biggest possible string that I could find. And those are the strings that hold up huge bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge. And if you have a look at these bridges, they've got giant cables that are holding up the decks of the bridge. But those cables are just like this, but made from steel and absolutely enormous. So I think of those as string as well. And the last invention I have is the pump. And it's like a little balloon pump. So if you imagine putting your balloon here and then it pumps air into it. And what are pumps? Pumps are fundamentally things, devices that move liquids or gases. And that's been really important for us humans because we need water to survive. We need water to drink, but we also need water to grow food. And so you can go back again to ancient Egypt, where they actually had a giant screw, which looked a little bit like my spring here, but inside a casing, and they would dip this into the water, and they would turn this screw, and the water would get pulled out of the river, and they could irrigate their crops. So pumps have changed so much over time, but my favourite pump is one that all of us actually have. So if you think about what's inside your chest, you've got your heart, and that must be one of the most complex pumps in the whole world, because it's taking fresh oxygenated blood to all of our body, and it's recycling the blood which has come back without oxygen. It's incredibly important. And what's so interesting is that we now have the science and the engineering that if we have a problem with our own natural pump, we can add an extra pump to it. Called ventricular assist device, which helps our pump work a little bit better. So that is a quick summary of the 7 inventions in my book, in 7 small inventions that changed the world, which was illustrated by Jisoo Choi. It's now available in the shops, and if you want to find out more about me and my other books, you can find me at Roma the Engineer. Thank you very much.
Could we build a colony on Mars or play football on the moon? I'm Tim Peake and I'm here to talk to you about my brand new book, perfect for space lovers aged 9 and up. The Cosmic Diary of a Future Space Explorer tells aspiring astronauts what they can really expect from everything that we've already discovered through to the real jobs of the future. So grab your spacesuits and get ready. We're about to go on an epic journey.
Well, thank you so much everyone for listening, and to wrap up, I'm just going to play a little reel which will give you a taste of some of the exciting titles we have in 2025.
I can see the stars align, dance around the moon every night, and now my eyes are open wide, and the sky has never looked so bright. Now I don't need to see the road to believe, yeah, 'cause this is where I'm meant to be, I believe. And I feel the magic everywhere. It's all around us, it's in the air. And I see the